Natasha Clark is with us. There's always complaints. There are always complaints that the Prime Minister doesn't answer the questions at PMQs. But I don't know that I can remember it in recent memory being quite as stark as that. It's a fairly straightforward question. 4,250 asylum seekers have gone missing. Failed asylum seekers or just asylum?
I think they're people that were in hotels. They
right.
were waiting for their cases to be processed. And yes,
and the
Keir
question
Starmer
is, where are they?
What's happened to them?
To which you can either answer, they're there, or you can answer, I don't know. Or you can do what Rishi Sunak did.
And just ignore it completely.
Yeah.
Yeah, not a great look. And he could have come back on this. He could have come back and said, well, actually, it's just proof that our asylum system isn't working because we've got so many of these hotels. People are absconding to go and work in the black market, to go and, try and get jobs, to try and whatever. There were answers that he could have come back on them, but he instead decided to completely dodge it, do a 360 and blame it back on Keir Starmer, and he's got no plan.
Because he wasn't expecting it, was he?
Yeah, I don't think so. It wouldn't have been one of the things
Rwanda-related criticism, in which case listing all the things that he can claim are getting better, even though obviously they've been in power for 14 years and most of these problems are of their own making. That list of quotes, achievements, end quotes, wasn't relevant to the question he was asked, and he wasn't fleet of foot enough to do something different.
No, he wasn't. He couldn't think on his feet and go, actually, there is a way. And I think there is a way that he could have got around that question, but he was not able and agile enough to do so. And we do see from both of them that they're quite rehearsed Prime Minister's questions these days. And I wonder if Rishi Sunak has maybe spent a little bit less time this week rehearsing for Prime Minister's questions because he's got a lot of other things on his plate, namely a brewing Tory rebellion later today.
And it's been noticed. My texts are always interesting. They're particularly interesting on Wednesdays because I can detect directions of traffic, and they're pretty equable, actually. If Sunak gets the better of Starmer, people will point it out. But this is a theme that Kate has picked up on in Surrey. She says Sunak is like he's being asked what he'd like to eat in a pub. And asking for a lemonade. What would you like to eat? I'll have a lemonade,
please.
It reminds me. Did you watch the Fast Show? You're much younger than me. So
Sorry,
there was a scene in the first sketch in the Fast Show when a bloke would be sent out to buy stuff for his wife, and I was reminded of that a bit.
Hello, dear. How's it going?
Oh, I think I'm on top of it. Now, did you get the eggs, the butter, and the potatoes?
Even better than that, I've got some biscuits shaped like radios, a map of Cairo, and an ice pick.
So Starmer says, where have the 4,250 missing asylum seekers gone? And Rishi Sunak goes, even better than that. I've got some biscuits shaped like radios, a map of Cairo, and an ice pick. Anyway, that's what it reminded me of.
Yeah, it didn't sound great, did it? It just sounds, again, like another politician dodging a question that they don't want to answer, which is exactly what it was.
Clever tactics of Starmer to do it 3 or 4 times to come back with it, because for me, Sunak looks weaker every time. He obviously fails to even pretend to be answering the relevant question.
Exactly, and they're trying the Tories this new attack line. Clearly, it's obviously resonated with some focus groups. Clearly, that's why they're using it again and again. Back to square one with Starmer. Nice alliteration, I'll give them that. But is it going to resonate with the public? Like I say, there must be some evidence that it has been, because they wouldn't be using it. I don't think if they would just magic it out of thin air. That this guy doesn't have a plan, and they're using the same attack that they were using on the economy. He doesn't have a plan for the economy. Yeah. Now they're using it for migration too.
While their own policy, it is a bizarre state of affairs when they're tearing each other's to shreds over their own plan and accusing the other fella of not having one.
Yeah, and I thought we would get into that a little bit earlier with Sir Keir Starmer. I thought that he would use some of those, quotes that he did eventually use from some of those Tory rebels, and you don't back it. So many of your MPs don't even like it, don't think it was going to work, and he did eventually get into that, but it did take him a little while, didn't it? So
yes, and there are lawyers who aren't persuaded by the efficacy of this bill as well. So Starmer again not turning on a sixpence in a way that he might have done.
Yes, true, and he did sort of go a little bit into the argument of these lawyers are kicking back a bit of the government today, because the government have said, well, actually, we'll put more in the upper tiers of the judiciary system to get through what they expect will be quite a lot of appeals. For people who are going to be deported to Rwanda, and the judges are saying, actually, bud out, that's for us to decide, not for you.
Yes, exactly. And the Square One, you say it would poll well. I wonder now, because I was looking at some of the stuff the Telegraph did this week with the £70,000 worth of opaquely funded opinion polling that's been dominating their front page. And part of it depends on how you ask the question. So if Yes, if I say to you, do you think Rwanda's a big deal? You might say yes. But if I say to you, where would you put it on a list of 20 things that you want the government to be doing? You might also put it 20th.
It depends whether you say Rwanda, depends whether you say migration, because we know that, the pollsters tend to poll issues rather than a specific policy most of the time. And we know that migration is always an issue that comes in that top 5 usually issues. But Rwanda, people don't tend to put the 2 and 2 together. I think the public obviously completely have issues about migration. They completely have concerns about it. But do they back the Rwanda policy? There's less supportive polling on whether people actually think that this plan is the right plan, and also whether they think it's going to work at all.
Right. And I don't even know how much intellectual or political capital the average person is expending on it, to be honest with you.
I don't think so.
It doesn't pop up in my inboxes where people are obsessing about it. They might, as you say, have varying degrees of obsession with the question of immigration in general. But if the Rwanda thing were to succeed on an unprecedented scale, it's not going to make much of a dent in the bigger quotes problem end quotes.
I don't think so, but it obviously tapped back into the problem that Rishi Sunak has to hold on to those red wall seats, right? Where immigration traditionally voted more heavily in favour of Brexit, and he needs to hang on to those. All of the evidence shows that those are exactly where he's going to lose seats, according to that MRP poll in the Telegraph. But also, basically, every poll that's been done shows that they're losing support in the red wall because they went on Brexit in 2019 with Boris Johnson as Prime Minister, leading that charge, and now they need to have an offer to the red wall. So, is migration going to play a part in the election? Of course, it will, but it shouldn't be the main part in the election. Because I think, as you're right, I don't think it resonates with the entire public in a way that perhaps it did 5 years ago.
Well, it puts some people off. It puts some Conservatives off as well. James Arbuthnot speaking yesterday about a xenophobic streak in his own party that he finds particularly unpalatable. They didn't go near the. What was the other thing you suggested? There was something else that didn't come up, and I was surprised it didn't come up.
Did talk about inflation, but the Prime Minister ignored the fact that inflation has gone down today.
Gone up?
Sorry, gone up today.
And do we know why it's gone up?
Well, it has gone up, funnily enough. Economists think this is quite good. This is quite good. They've shot themselves in the foot here. The Office for National Statistics says today the main cause of unanticipated growth in inflation was increased tobacco prices due to higher taxes.
So higher taxes on tobacco introduced by Jeremy Hunt.
Which was increased at the last budget, I believe.
So people are still smoking on a sufficient scale to tip inflation upwards after the price of fags goes up.
Yeah, but it's a shot in the foot.
Yeah,
Rishi Sunak's inflation message has now been completely lost due to his own chancellor, which is pretty poor. The ONS also says it was the cost of alcohol. Again, we know that alcohol, very heavily taxed in this country and has gone up. I think the spirits campaigners are saying today that inflation on spirits has now gone up from around 3.5% last year to now 8.9%. So it's fueling inflation because of our high tax rates. And Rishi Sunak has then the audacity to talk to the SNP about their high tax system in Scotland, which is, I don't think that's an argument that resonates. Everyone knows that the taxes has gone up under the Conservative Party.
And finally, the prop. Now, would he have known that he was going to get told off for that, but consider that it was worth it? I was impressed to learn that Keir Starmer was a lawyer of sufficient repute that he'd actually write a textbook referred to by every state in the European Union. But that's a conversation for a different day.
I didn't know that you were not allowed to use props in this way, because I know that Prime Ministers, and I'm recalling a specific incident where David Cameron waved a piece of paper at Prime Minister's questions with a specific article on. Was that? And I don't remember the Speaker at the time calling him out on that. He may have done. I could be wrong.
Between a piece of paper
and a booklet. What's the difference there? I didn't know that was the case. But yes, I mean, Lindsay Hall was a bit grumpy at that Prime Minister's questions, wasn't it? He kept trying to ruin the vibe, I thought.
Yes, technical term. I read a couple of these because it's a recurring theme. You picked up on the Square One slogan, as it were. Stephen writes, first-time texter, I think I'm looking lovingly back at the days of Square One, James, rather than the nightmare of Octagon 77, which we appear to have been living in for the last 14 years. And Sean in Wiltshire says, is the Square One they talk about 2010 rather than the state of the country after 14 years of Tory government? If so, I'd take that in a heartbeat. Ben in Exeter says, back to square one sounds quite appealing to me right now. It feels like we aren't even on the board at the moment. I can't see that line working. Anna says, back to square one before them sounds kind of good to me. And Mike points out that it's not just the fast show that Rishi Sunak was channeling there. There was also a touch of that famous Two Ronnies sketch where Ronnie Corbett is answering the question before the one that Ronnie Barker actually asked. I may have got that the wrong way around, but I take your point. It's an extremely clever sketch. Natasha Clark, thank you.